The purpose of this lesson is to learn about event handling, how to declare your own events and handlers, how to manage multiple controls, how to remove unneeded controls, how to locate the mouse on the form and also to keep track of key presses, and how to use the TabStop and TabIndex properties. An event is something that occurs when something that this thing called the listener finds interesting. The listener is a section of code that is sitting in the background that is waiting for something specific to occur. So what happens is we tell our program that we're waiting for somebody to click on something, or somebody to move the mouse, or somebody to press a key on the keyboard, or for a timer to occur, and the listener is just simply sitting in the background waiting for that. When that particular event occurs, then the listener acts upon it, and the listener has this thing called an event handler. Now, the event handler is a section of code, specifically a method that is responsible for performing a task when that particular event occurs. Now, the event handler, like I said, that's going to be a method. That's going to be a separate method for each event that occurs, and typically we're going to have a separate method that would get run for each individual type of event that could occur on each particular object. The event sender is the control from which the event occurs. So the sender, if I click on a button, would be the button itself, the event would be the click, and the handler would be the mouse click event. So it would be a method that's waiting that will get run when that particular event occurs. We can declare our own events. Most controls have a default event. So if I make a button on the screen, then the button by default has a click event. And if I just simply double click on it, it will make the default event. Most of the controls that we have, if we double click on them, we get the default event. If I want to make a different event occur, then my option is going to be to click on the little lightning bolt down by the properties pane and then select the particular event that I want to occur. You just simply type the name of whatever you want the event to be called, you press enter, and then when you do that, it will actually create the method for that particular event. The event arguments, these are going to be things that the program is keeping track of. Things like, if I click on something, where did I click? What did I click? Did I left click? Did I mouse click? What else is going on the screen at the time? If I pressed a key on the keyboard, which key did I press? Were there key combinations? Did I press the Alt key with it? So what happens is most of these arguments have a two-string method attached to them that we can actually pull out information to see what exactly the event was. It's possible to keep track of where the mouse is. It's possible to keep track of what key was pressed on the keyboard. There is this thing called focus, and the focus is going to be when I press the enter key, what control am I currently on? So which one is the current control, and then when I press the enter key, it will just automatically perform some sort of task. Now the enter key causes a particular event to be raised, and it's called an acceptance. What happens is when I press the enter key, it's going to look to see if the control that I'm currently in has an event declared for it when I press the enter key. Now, when we have our form, we may have a bunch of text boxes, we may have different buttons and other types of controls. And if we press the tab key on the keyboard, we can actually tab through all of those things instead of using the mouse. We control whether or not those things are tabbable by using what's called the TabStop property. It's a true-false entry in the properties window. And what we do is we just simply click on each individual control, and then we specify whether or not there is a tab stop. If there is a tab stop, we have to control the order by using the tab index. Now the tab index is just simply going to be a number, so we have tab index 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth. And what we want to do to make our program look professional is we want to set the tab index so that when I press the tab key on the keyboard, it moves in the order that the user is going to expect it to occur. I'm going to make a forms-based application, and what I want to do is I'm going to add some text boxes, a button, and then a label. So here's text box 1, text box 2, another text box. We'll add a label to it. and then we will also add a button. And actually, I'm going to make another label. I'm going to make one for each of these boxes so you can see what happens. And then a third one here. Now these labels, I want to line them up, and what happens is to line them up with the text box, you have to line them up after you drop them on the form. Okay, so now those are lined up. Then we're going to take these text boxes and line these up. We always want to make our forms look professional, so we try to line things up and try to make everything nice and neat on it. We want it to be evenly spaced out. So there you go. Okay, our button, we want to center it on the screen. And our label, we're going to center the label, but our label, we actually don't want it to show anything. And I want to make sure that I rename these. So this is going to be my LBL output. This is going to be my go button, which is a command button, so CMD go. And when I come down here to text, we're just going to make it go. And then these labels here, this is going to be something like number 1. Oops, that's the text for it. Number 2. And then number 3, which I'm going to line these up and make them look nicer in a minute. And then there are going to be labels, but we don't care to do anything with them, so I'm just going to leave them as labels 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I accidentally double clicked on one of those labels, which means what I did is I created a click event for it. And if I just try to delete the text that's here, what will happen is I actually will end up breaking my program. So I don't want to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to undo this, which means I can go back to my program, and I had accidentally clicked on this label here. So what I'm going to do is go to events over here, and you'll notice I have a click event. And what I'm going to do is delete this by pressing the backspace key on my keyboard and pressing enter. And it just deleted the event, and now I can actually delete the code that is here without breaking the program. Alright, so anyhow, this label here, I want to move it over a little bit to make it lined up nice. And this one, there you go. So now they're all nice and neat. Move this over just a little bit more. Alright, so our text boxes, these we do need to rename because we are going to be using those. So this is going to be TBX number 1. This is TBX number 2. And then this one is TBX number 3. Okay, now this is just for the purpose of being able to use IntelliSense to actually select my items later. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to make it where if a user comes into the form, if they press the tab key on the keyboard, I want them to be able to tab between these 3 boxes and this button, and I want it to keep going back and forth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the tab stop, and you'll notice that our tab stop is true, and the tab index is 0. If I click on the next one, if I look at tab stop, tab stop is true and tab index is 1. The next one, tab stop is true, tab index is 2. And then our button here is true and its tab index of 4. Now the labels here are tab stop. We're not actually going to have a tab stop for these because they are not a control where the user should be able to get into with just using the keyboard. Alright, so when I run the program, I can tab back and forth between each of these. Alright, but what I want to do is, what if I want these to be in a different order? Well, then what I would do is I would change the tab index. So maybe I want this one to be 0, I want this one to be 1, and I want this one to be 2. Then what will happen is when I go through and I tab, now the program tabs different. Now the users do not expect this. They really expect to start at the top, so we want to make sure that we keep them in the correct order. So that's 0, this one is 1, and then this one was 2. So that way when we go through and we tab, you have the correct tab order. Alright, so I also want to do something else, which is for my form, I want to make it where if I press enter, I want whatever happens with this button, I want it to to be the thing that gets selected. So if I select over here, you'll see I have a drop-down box under Accept button, and CMD Go is what we're going to do if we press Enter. So what happens is if I run the program, if I just simply press Enter, it would actually run whatever the Go button does. Now in this case, the Go button isn't doing anything because we haven't actually coded anything yet, but it would be the default event for the Go button is what would actually happen. And right now there just is nothing defined for it. Now I lost my label down here, and my label is LBL output. You can select that from over here. And what I want to do is I want to make it where if you click on this button, it'll take number 1 plus number 2 plus number 3 and add those together. Alright, but for me to do this, I need to give these a default value. Alright, so what I'm going to do is the text for these, I'm going to set these all equal to 0. That way they have some initial value, and that way if somebody just comes into the program and clicks the Go button, then it will actually add them together. Alright, so I'm going to make a default event for the Go button, and then what I did by double clicking on it was it actually came up and made a method for me. And what I want to do is I want to add the values that are in all of those text boxes together. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make double values here, and I'm going to call this DBL number 1, and this is going to be equal to whatever is in the text box for number 1, but I need to convert it to an integer. So convert to a double. And what am I converting to a double? I'm converting whatever's in TBX number 1 dot text. Okay, do the same thing for DBL number 2. Whatever's in TBX number 2 dot text. And then another one for DBL number 3. TBX number 3 dot text. And then now what I have is just simply where it takes those 3 text boxes, whatever number is in those, it will convert it to a double and then put it into this DBL number 1, 2, and 3. And so I want it to take those 3 numbers and I want it to add those together. So I need another double, which is going to be DBL sum, and we're going to set that equal to DBL number 1 plus DBL number 2 plus DBL number 3. And then the last step is going to be to simply change the label. So LB output.text, and we're going to set that equal to whatever is currently in DBL sum. The thing is DBL sum though is a number and I need it formatted as a string. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a string.format. And string.format says that I can take something and format it like we did our console.write line. So I'm going to say 0. That's our placeholder. And then what am I going to put into that? I'm going to put DBL sum. Alright, so when I run the program, whatever numbers I put into these, click Go, it adds those together, and that's what gets displayed. That is a default event. Okay, so if I change this to 6, and then 3, and then I press Enter, it automatically will run the Go button, so no matter which one I'm on, if I do 60, press Enter, it will automatically run it. So it pretends that I clicked the Go button. So our Go button here is the Accept button, which means if I press Enter, it's the same as clicking on it. Alright, so I want to play with this a little bit. I want to make it where if I just simply hover the mouse over this thing, that it will show me that I'm hovering the mouse. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click on the event. So I have the button selected and click the events, which is the little lightning bolt. And you'll notice for a click event, we already have a CMD go _ click. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another one, and if I scroll down, I have mouse events that I can do. I can do mouse click, mouse down, mouse enter. Now mouse enter means that my mouse has moved within the region for that particular control. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do CMD go, because usually the way that it works is we're going to have the name of the control _ whatever the event is. So this is mouse enter. And then when I press enter, it'll actually make a section of code that is related to if the mouse enters this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take LBL output.text, and I'm going to set that equal to you are hovering over the go button. Okay, so that's it. So we're just simply saying that we're hovering over it. Okay, so now if I bring my mouse down here and I hover over the go button, now it says you're hovering over the go button. Now it goes off the side, so I want to move that around a little bit. So we're going to select our LBL output. And this is just for demonstration, so we're not so worried about how things are formatted, but we want it to be on the screen. Alright, so run it again, and you're hovering. Okay, so now I do 6, 7, 8, click go. It provides the total there, but if I come up here and go to go again, it overwrites whatever was in that label. Okay, if I come up here and I press enter, once again it pretends that I clicked on the go button. Alright, so I don't necessarily want it to be that if I enter the button, I want it to be if I hover over it. So what I can do, oops, didn't mean to do that. I want this to be the click event. If I do not mouse enter, I'm going to delete this, but I want mouse hover. Okay, now if I run it, now if I just enter it, it doesn't actually show it right away. It takes a second for it to show up. But the hover is a little bit different because the hover is if I hold the mouse there for too long, then it will actually display it. So they work kind of the same. We have mouse down, mouse leave. So if I want to, I could change this to be mouse leave. So let's say I run this. Okay, I hover over this go button. It's not doing anything, but as soon as I take the mouse out, then it would show it. So I have different events that I can use to manipulate this particular control with the mouse. And I could do the same thing with the labels. So if I have this label over here, I could make an event that says, let's see, mouse, enter, let's do label, what's it called, label 4, and then underscore mouse, enter. Okay, so now what I can do is LBL output.text, you are hovering over the label 4. Okay, so if I come over here, oops, you are hovering over the label for semicolon. Okay, so start this, and if I hover over this label now, it says you're hovering. Hover over the button. Actually, I set it for leaving the button. So if I leave the button, then it tells me, and if I press enter, it'll add the 3 numbers together. So I have different events that can occur that manipulate this same label down here. It just depends on what I'm doing as to what it will actually cause it to happen. Alright, I'm going to make another label on here. Stick it at the bottom here. And we'll just call it, there's not going to be any text to it right away, but we'll call it LBL event. Okay, so what I want to do is I'm going to take this label down here, and I want this to keep track of where the mouse is on the screen. So what I'm going to do is for my form itself, I'm going to create an event, and there's one here called mouse move. And so if I move the mouse, so form1 underscore mouse move, what I want to do is I want to keep track of where the mouse is. And to do this, I'm going to take label 1, sorry, not label 1, LBL event.text and set that equal to something. Now I need to do a string.format to be able to get it to specify where my mouse is. So I'm going to do string.format, and then I'm going to keep track of the coordinates. So it's going to be 0, comma, and then 1, and that's going to be my x and y coordinates. And you'll notice here that I have the sender. Now the sender is going to be the form or whatever the particular object is that I'm interacting with. But over here, E is going to be the event that occurs. And so if I type E dot, I have some things that I can use to manipulate E. And you notice I have an X here, and then my X has a dot, and then there's a toString method that's here. Okay, I can do the same thing with E dot Y dot toString, and that's another method. And now what I can do when I run this, as I move my mouse, it'll keep track of where the mouse is on the screen in terms of X and Y. And you notice here if I get to the top left is my 0, 0. And then at the bottom right is going to be my highest, which looks like 283, somewhere right around there, and 260. So I can actually keep track of where in this window my mouse is. Now if I click on the go, if I hover over the number, so I have all these different events that are being run by the mouse. The mouse is running all of these. But it's just simply stating that when I run these, I can keep track of where it is, and then these other events. I can have multiple events that all occur on the same thing, run by the same sender, that have different events that occur. I want to be able to show you a key press, and there's a slight problem, which is when I run this program, I have things on here that have tab stops. So it won't quite work for this particular program. So what I have to do is I have to get rid of anything that has a tab stop to it before this next step will actually work. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and close the solution, and then we'll go ahead and make a new blank one. Alright, so here's my new blank project. There's nothing in it. And what I'm going to do is for the form, I'm going to manipulate the key press event. So for form1 underscore key press, I want to make a method here. And the method is I want to pop up a message box that says that you pressed a key. Okay, so I'm going to do a message box.show, and I want to format a string. Alright, so what I'm going to have to do is string.format, and then this is like our console.write line that we've been doing. You clicked the, and then use character substitution key. And what did you click? Well, I clicked E dot, and you notice we have a key char dot toString method that's available. And so now what that does is that makes it where we tell the user that you clicked this particular key on the keyboard, and I want to have a title that says that they pressed a key, so just key pressed. Alright, so now if I run this, if I press a key on the keyboard, it'll pop up a message box showing that you clicked the J key. Alright, so if I click K, if I do capital P, if I do backspace. Now notice this is a Unicode character for it. It won't support it because this is text only, but I press backspace key. I could press any key on the keyboard and it will actually display here. So I just press tab. If I press a shift key, and they're going to require a combination, so capital F and so forth. But what this means is that I have an event. The event is the key press, and I have a sender, which is the keyboard, and then I have a listener waiting for me to press the key, and when I do it, the event occurs, and then I can take that event and actually show what exactly occurred for the particular event. In this lesson, you learned about event handling, you learned how to declare your own events and handlers, you learned how to manage multiple controls for the same element or to have different controls for different elements. You learned how to remove an unneeded control, so when I accidentally double-clicked on the label, make sure you delete the event first, then you can go back and delete the code from the .cs file. You learned how to locate the mouse on the form and to show what keys were pressed, and you also learned how to use the TabStop and TabIndex properties.